Hello, I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori in for Hashtag the U-Word. It's Tuesday, August the 24th. This is Africa 54.
How will Zambia's new president, Hakainde Hichilema, tackle the country's crushing debt? We'll have an exclusive interview with the new leader. How Kenya is combating a severe fourth wave of COVID infections. And skiing in Africa? Tourists hit the Lesotho slopes.
We begin in West Africa, where Senegalese officials say the former president of Chad, Hissene Habre, has died while serving a life sentence for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Habre's 8-year rule of Chad from 1982 to 1990 was marked by a brutal crackdown on dissent, in which more than 40,000 people were killed and some 200,000 others tortured, according to investigators. After his overthrow, he lived freely in Dakar for more than 2 decades before being arrested in 2013. He was tried and convicted by a special African Union-backed tribunal in Senegal 3 years later. Reports Tuesday say he had been recently released from prison for treatment of a coronavirus infection. Habre was 79 years old. Now, Hakainde Hichilema is officially Zambia's new president following his inauguration on Tuesday after defeating incumbent Edgar Lungu in a general election. VOA correspondent Peter Clottey sat down with Hichilema for an exclusive interview just days before Tuesday's swearing in to discuss his goals and vision for his 5-year term. In part 1, the president spoke about what he hopes to accomplish in his first 100 days of office and how he plans to tackle the debt situation that is choking the economy.
It's very clear what our agenda is, and that's what the people of Zambia bought. And they bought 2 fundamental focal areas. One, we want to reunite this country. This country has been divided for so many years, and the divisions are visible. You just have to look anywhere. You see them in the workplaces, in the market areas, divisions all over. So we want to reunite this country, because on the platform of unity, on the platform of peace and stability, we can then do the second anchor of what we are selling, what we sold to the people of Zambia. What is that? Reconstruction, rebuilding our country. So that's rebuilding the country, economically, to bring back economic prosperity, to bring back investment, to bring back jobs. Today is a new day. After we won the election, you should have seen the celebrations across the country. And by the way, the mandate we have is a nationwide mandate.
Right.
We basically, it's unprecedented. It doesn't happen in an autocratic environment to deliver the sort of resounding victory that we delivered. I want to thank the people of Zambia. I want to thank the youth who endured long hours on the queues. As early as 1 in the morning, they were on the queues. Up to about 22 hours, 23 hours for some. For others, up to the following day in the morning, because the turnout was huge. And that turnout, once I saw it, huge, lines huge, I said, this is it, because they wanted change. Thank you.
Mr. President, within the first 100 days, or perhaps 1 year, what do you seek to achieve for the people of Zambia? Because I understand last time when you spoke that you are daring to go. What would you want to have achieved within the first 100 days and perhaps the first year?
We will restore order in this country. There's not much you can do when there's chaos everywhere. Chaos in the markets, chaos in the bus stops. We sent that signal that nobody would take away people's rights to be in a place when they want to. Just that press briefing we had, there's now order in the markets. There's no hooliganism in the markets. And this is the beginning. Because once we have order, we have normalcy, we have civility, we can then move to do other things. So Definitely, because you're not local. For locals, I would have gone on to say, even the councils now are extremely delighted, excited that they will begin to earn revenue, which was earned by militias, party militias, armed militias, that were not just brutalizing citizens, but taking away their income that they would apply to pay salaries for local authority workers, that they would apply to provide services, garbage collection, and things like that for the residents of those cities. Excitement all over.
On several occasions, you have said that the debt is unsustainable.
Indeed.
So, Mr. President, how do you plan on resolving this? Because some people are suggesting that it is crashing the economy. What plans do you have to jumpstart the economy?
We want to make sure first, as a starting point, we determine what is the true debt, because there's a gray area there. What is the quantum of this debt? How much would we comfortably, confidently say this is the debt position, foreign and domestic? We don't know. Numbers are being thrown around. So we want to make sure we very quickly in the next 100 days, within the next 100 days, establish what the true debt position is. And one of the principles we use is that sit down with the debt providers, debt stockholders, and have a professional conversation, a mature conversation, respectful conversation, to see how together, when in it together, we come out of this mess. I come from a business background. You don't pay your debt, you're not credible. Now we are not credible, but we want to bring the country back to credibility. Because we bring that respectability and professionalism, I think the debt stockholders will also be happy that now there's a new leadership, there's a new team that is willing to come to the table to find a common solution, win-win situation.
Well, tomorrow we'll have part 2 of Peter Clottey's exclusive interview with the new Zambian President, Hakainde Hichilema. So be sure to tune in. Back to West Africa, Nigeria's Information Minister Lai Mohammed has confirmed to VOA that Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau is dead. His comments in an interview with VOA's Grace Oyenubi came 5 months after the militant group said he had died. There have been several false reports of his death in the past. Mohammed told VOA last Friday the government had not previously said that Shekau had died because it was waiting to confirm the death. The Boko Haram terrorists have killed thousands of people in northeastern Nigeria over more than a decade in an attempt to impose a strict version of Islam. Now, residents say Al-Shabaab fighters attacked a military base in the center of Somalia Tuesday and seized a nearby town. Citizens of Amara in the Galmudug region say the attack started in the morning with Al-Shabaab fighters detonating a suicide bomb targeting government special force units known as Danab and Darwish. Amara is a strategic town which lies on the way to the coastal town of Haradere, another Al-Shabaab stronghold. Haradere was once a pirate base at the height of hijackings of merchant ships in 2011. Amid a severe fourth wave of COVID infections, members of Kenya's Maasai community are getting the coronavirus vaccine. VOA's Clara Frank has more.
Hundreds of people from Kenya's iconic Maasai community queued up for their vaccine on Monday as the country confronts a severe fourth wave of infections. Vaccine uptake across the East African country remains low. Health Ministry figures suggest just 2.9% of the entire adult population is fully inoculated. But at the Bissell Health Center in Kajiado, Lemuria Moyle says it's important to get your shot. Kenya is facing a severe fourth wave, with a positivity rate among those tested of 13.3%. On Monday, 880,000 doses of the vaccine, manufactured by Moderna, arrived in the country. That's part of a shipment donated by the United States through COVAX. Kenya intends to vaccinate 10 million people by December, or around 20% of the population. Clara Frank, VOA News.
Guinean health authorities are continuing to monitor people who have been in contact directly or indirectly with a man who died of Marburg virus earlier this month. A hemorrhagic fever like Ebola, Marburg has a historic fatality rate of up to 88%, and transmission between humans is usually through contact with blood or other bodily fluids, according to the World Health Organization. The incubation period of the virus, which is the time from infection to onset of symptoms, varies from 2 to 21 days, and experts have kept at least 150 people under observation for 3 weeks. To find out more about Marburg virus and the current situation in Guinea, Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu spoke with Dr. Georges Kinsabro, the WHO head of office and representative in Guinea.
Marburg virus disease is an hemorrhagic viral fever from the same family as Ebola virus disease. It's a highly virulent pathogen which was known to cause outbreaks in other regions, areas of Africa. So this is the first time in West Africa that a human case is actually reported. But we knew from studies before that the virus was actually circulating in animal populations.
It's a very similar disease like Ebola, but how much of a concern is it?
It is a concern because first, there are no known or proven interventions such as vaccines or therapeutics for Marburg. There have been innovations for Ebola in the last few years, but for Marburg, you only have prevention. Secondly, this area is an area with high mobility of populations, and there's a lot of mobility between the three countries in particular.
So what is the latest regarding Guinea specifically? One case was detected. Contact tracing has been put in place. So what is the latest?
The latest is that, unfortunately, this case died from his disease. 173 contacts have been traced, and 4 or 5 high-risk contacts have been also identified. The contact tracing was very conservative to make sure that the risk is contained.
What makes Ebola different from Marburg or vice versa?
The difference is that for Marburg, so far, no vaccine or no treatment has been licensed. So prevention is the key.
With recurring outbreak of Ebola in Guinea, how is continued surveillance utilized to ensure that Ebola does not break out again and spread within the country and beyond?
What we are seeing probably, and studies will continue to confirm that, is that we are at a place or in an area of emergence and re-emergence. So this is linked to probably interaction between human animal populations and the environment. Currently for Marburg, ecological studies are being conducted to see what could be the reservoir, the origin in animal populations, especially bats, of these new case of Marburg in that area. So WHO and other partners are working with the government of Guinea to strengthen surveillance. We are also working along the framework of the One Health concept, which is really linking human, animal health, and also the environment.
Now, what strategy is put in place in Guinea to take care of the COVID-19 crisis along with the outbreak of Marburg and Ebola? How are authorities handling 3 health crises at the same time?
We are really collaborating very closely with Côte d'Ivoire for investigation, contact tracing, and also preventive measures. The government of Guinea has put in place a plan to respond to COVID, and we are supporting that plan in all the pillars, including coordination, case management, and also vaccine introduction. But we are not forgetting the continuity of services. We still have malaria, TB, HIV, and other programs also to support. Resource mobilization is also key. Guinea has secured enough vaccine to reach a good proportion of vaccine coverage by the end of this year, maybe 30%.
What can you tell us in terms of WHO's assistance in Guinea and even in the region in addressing these health challenges?
So WHO is really working with countries to put in place national health security plans, focusing more on preparedness. The idea is to stop with the cycle of what is called panic and neglect. So this approach is being pursued with member states, but also with regional economic communities such as ECOWAS. We have the West African Health Organization, we have the African Union and Africa CDC. We also have big health initiatives such as the Global Health Security Agenda from the government of the United States. So many stakeholders coming together so that a more proactive approach based on preparedness, early detection, and early response can limit the risks of these outbreaks that are going to be there.
Guinea is also monitoring about 58 contact cases of an Ebola patient who traveled recently from the country to Ivory Coast. Now, some international students in the United States are struggling to get fully vaccinated before returning to school this fall. Connor Smith has this report.
While COVID-19 cases are rising again, international students returning to the U.S. are finding it difficult to get vaccinated. Jenny Zhang came from China to study at Columbia University in New York. She got the Sinopharm vaccine this spring in Beijing. The vaccine has been approved by the World Health Organization, or WHO, and her school. Now, back in the U.S., Zhang is considering a Pfizer or Moderna booster.
I was a bit worried about my vaccination because I did hear that, the Sinopharm one might not be as effective, especially against the Delta variant.
Before coming back to the States in May, Zhang spent 2 weeks quarantining in Dubai. Like China, the U.S. restricts incoming travelers.
I just stayed in the hotel for 2 weeks. It was not very enjoyable.
Yoon-ha Hun, a South Korean, came back to the U.S. early to get vaccinated and stay with her aunt in Northern Virginia. COVID-19 is on the rise in South Korea, and only 20% of the population is fully vaccinated. Hun attends Pratt Institute in New York, where students must either get vaccinated or quarantined for 2 weeks. Shots are available for students upon their return.
If they were requiring students to quarantine for 2 weeks, I feel like they should at least provide a space for them to quarantine, because a lot of international students don't have a place to stay in the States.
Syracuse University student Jessica Tran had trouble getting inoculated in her home country of Vietnam, where vaccinations didn't begin in earnest until July.
We have received vaccines from the UK and from China and from Japan, and unfortunately, those are not the vaccines that are currently used in the U.S.
Like many U.S. colleges and universities, Syracuse says it is working with international students on a case-by-case basis.
Vaccinations are readily available in Syracuse, and we do not anticipate that international students will experience any difficulty in obtaining the vaccine once they arrive. Students who get vaccinated upon arrival must wear a mask and participate in weekly COVID testing until 2 weeks after their final vaccine dose.
And so right now I'm not going into the city as much. I think back at school, if I know that everyone is vaxxed, then I'd be a lot more comfortable.
Most students will return to university between now and mid-September. Connor Smith for VOA News, Washington.
Elevated houses, water level sensors, rebuild natural barriers. Now, coastal communities are struggling to hold back the distraction from climate change. But in our new code red era, more radical steps are on the horizon. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias explains.
Norfolk, Virginia, has the second highest rate of sea level rise in the United States. High tides are transforming its shoreline. All these because of human-caused climate change.
The seeds of the salt marsh grasses that you see behind me were most probably brought in by increasingly high tides, and they are now growing where they aren't supposed to and taking over the neighborhood's lawns.
More frequent and heavier rainfall events have increased the risk of floods, forcing residents like Nina Olander to ask for a federal grant to raise their homes.
We have gotten a quote from a contractor that it's going to cost around $450,000 to lift our home, and then up to 8 months of being out of our home, having to pay, our mortgage still in this home, and then rent or whatever.
And that's just one house. In August, President Joe Biden released $3.5 billion to help mitigate damage from climate change. It's an unprecedented amount for programs at the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
There's really large investments by FEMA and Army Corps to begin to manage our coastal infrastructure, as well as groups like Federal Highway to think about how our transportation protects itself into the future.
It's not only the United States. Sea level rise is a global threat.
Southeast Asia particularly is another hotspot of sea level extremes. It's a combination both of changes in ocean circulation, land ice dynamic, and land subsidence caused by human activity.
Europe and China suffered historic floods this summer. Scientists blamed climate change. In Norfolk, Derek Loftus, with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, and city officials use technology, a network of 50 sensors, to alert residents about water levels and flooding.
They measure it above the water surface on bridges, usually over waterways. This uses mobile broadband instead of satellites to transmit data, which keeps the data costs low.
The city is also installing bigger pumps, upgrading the stormwater system, and also using concrete and metal to extend a downtown flood wall. In addition, a $112 million project uses nature to protect historic neighborhoods.
Building a berm, which is kind of like a levee, earthen berm, so it's made of dirt and soil, and has plantings and grass on top of it and around it. In front of the berm is living shoreline that has rock revetments and armoring of the berm so that it prevent the erosion.
Construction from these projects makes a daily racket right next to Terry Wade Stansell's house. Hurricanes have flooded his yard. Insurance will only cover a portion of the cost. So he's looking for a long-term fix.
So you look at the big picture that yes, now it's a headache, the noise, the fact that the property values have gone down because of all of this, the fact that when they finish, it's going to be a more desirable place to live.
Perhaps. Climate change is now so severe that all these methods, nature, technology, concrete, probably won't be enough.
There's going to be a need to move away from the coasts into higher ground. Some communities will just not be able to survive because they're so low-lying. And I think that's just something that in the next 50 years we're going to have to accept.
A new report from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has declared code red for the planet, warning, among other things, that 100-year sea level events will come far more often. Poorer countries will suffer the most, but no one is spared.
It's not like the rich countries can escape this problem. They just can kind of postpone a reckoning a little longer because they have the resources to build walls, etc. But we need to be implementing adaptation to protect people who are dying now due to the effects of climate change. And all of that going in parallel with the most strenuous possible efforts to reduce the emissions of the greenhouse gases.
The United States recently pledged to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. A global conference in Glasgow, Scotland, will look for more answers in November. But for coastal communities around the world, the water is rising and time is running out. Veronica Valderas Iglesias for VOA News, Norfolk, Virginia.
A vacation in Africa usually evokes images of palm-fringed beaches or safari tours. But in the mountain kingdom of Lesotho, one resort is attracting tourists seeking a more adventurous skiing destination. Here's David Doyle of Reuters.
Under a bright sun, skiers and snowboarders are enjoying the kind of powder you might find in the Alps. But this isn't Europe. This is Lesotho in southern Africa.
My name is Ramukoto Hope. I'm a snowboarding and a skiing instructor, and this is my playground. Though a vacation in Africa might typically conjure images of palm-fringed beaches or herds of wildebeest migrating across the savannah, the continent also has 5 mountain ranges with enough seasonal snow to create the potential for slopes. One resort can be found in Lesotho, the enclaved kingdom tucked into South Africa's Drakensberg mountain range. Hope says most people don't think of Africa for a ski holiday, but are amazed at what they find. Yes, it isn't much, but people come in and have a whole lot of fun. Let alone, for me as a local, I don't have to fly out of it yet. I've got a vacation right here.
He says he loves passing on his knowledge and would one day like to instruct in Japan. For first-time skier Kevin Kava, learning has been a struggle, but worth it.
My knees and feet are paining. I broke a sweat, unexpectedly, but it was mad fun, yeah.
However, the Afri-ski resort, like many other travel destinations, has struggled amid the global health crisis. Regional hub South Africa has been hit hard and is on most countries' red lists. The resort's owner says tourist numbers fell to virtually nothing in 2020 and are only half the usual 17,000 this year. It's hoped that skiers seeking a more adventurous destination will help Lesotho's snow sports scene back to its peak.
That's cool. And that was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thanks for watching.
Be sure to join me on the next Straight Talk Africa when we talk about reparations and redress as Namibia negotiates with Germany on compensation for colonial-era genocide. We ask how much is enough to make amends for atrocities and other sins of the past. We'll look at lessons from other parts of Africa and the world and hear from Namibians about what this means for the future of their country. Reparations, remorse and redress on the next